I sat across a desk from a loan officer who would not quite look me in the eye. And she slid my paperwork back across the desk and said she was sorry, but with my credit the way it was, there was no way the bank could approve the loan. And I sat there in my work shirt, with my name stitched on the pocket. And I said there must be a mistake, because I had 30 years of paying every bill on time. And she turned her screen a little toward me, gentle, the way you turn bad news toward a man, and showed me that I owed $110,000. I had never in my life borrowed. I did not raise my voice in that bank. I have learned that the worst news in the world lands quieter than you would think, in a kind of ringing silence. I thanked the woman, which is a strange thing to do. And I walked out to my van in the parking lot, and I sat there in the heat, and I looked at that number on the printout she let me keep. $110,000. Maxed cards I never opened. A second line against my own house. A drained account that used to hold my son's college money. And I am an HVAC man. I fix air conditioning for a living in Arizona, where a broken system in July is not an inconvenience, it is an emergency. And in my trade, the failure that ruins you is not the one that quits all at once. It is the slow leak. A system can lose its refrigerant a little at a time for a whole year and still blow cool enough that nobody in the house notices a thing, right up until the hottest day of the summer, the day you need it most. When it finally runs dry and quits all at once, with no slack left. Sitting in that van, I understood that my marriage and my bank account had both been leaking for a year. Quiet, cool enough that I never felt it, and that this was the hottest day and everything had just run dry at once. Stay with me. Because what I did over the next several months, instead of driving straight home to start a fight I did not yet understand, is the whole reason I am telling you this. The woman I trusted with everything, with the books, with the bank, with my name, had been bleeding our family dry to feed a secret life. And there was a man's name tangled all through the wreckage. This is not a story about revenge. I never raised my hand or even my voice. It is a story about a man who got hollowed out from the inside, kept his head, and learned that you can come back from being broke, but only if you first find out exactly how the leak ran. I am 44 years old. I install and repair heating and air conditioning around the Phoenix Valley, my own small two-van operation, the kind of business a man builds one service call at a time over 20 years. I was married for 19 years, 2 kids, a boy who is 17 and about to graduate, and a girl who is 11. If you are out there tonight, and you ever found out that the floor you were standing on had been rotting under you for a year while you smiled and paid the bills, tell me in the comments where you are watching from. There is a particular cold that goes through a man when he learns the ground was never solid, and the people who have felt it know it. Let me tell you about the trust first, because in this one, the trust is the very thing that sank me. I married Sherry when I was 25. She was good with people and good with numbers, better than me on both counts, and early on we fell into the natural arrangement that a lot of couples do. I went out and turned the wrenches and brought in the money, and she ran the house and the books. She paid the bills, kept the accounts, did the taxes, handled the cards, and I was grateful for it, because I am a man who would rather crawl through a 140-degree attic than sit down with a stack of statements. And she took all of that off my plate so I could do what I was good at. For 19 years I handed her every dollar I earned and never once asked to see where it went. Because asking your wife to show you the books feels like calling her a liar. And I trusted my wife the way I trust a system I charged myself. Completely. That is the trust that ruins a man. Because the account you never check is the account that is bleeding out. I want you to understand how good a life this trust built. Because that is what makes the leak so cruel. I grew that business from one beat-up van and a set of second-hand gauges into a real thing. 2 trucks, a steady book of customers who asked for me by name. A reputation in the valley as the man who showed up when your air died in July, and did not gouge you while you were desperate. I was proud of that. Honest work, done right, in brutal heat, for 20 years. And the whole time, the deal in our house was simple, and I thought it was beautiful. I made it, she managed it, and together we were building toward a paid-off house and 2 kids through college, and a quiet retirement where I could finally get out of the attics. Every grueling summer day, that picture was what I climbed up there for. I never once imagined that the person managing the money was quietly carrying it out the back door as fast as I carried it in the front. I thought we were filling the same bucket. She had drilled a hole in the bottom of it that I could not see, and I kept pouring, year after year, proud of how hard I poured. Here is the part I have to own, because I will not tell this if I cannot be straight. I made it easy. I did not just trust Sherry. I abdicated. I handed her the entire financial life of this family, and then I looked away from it for 19 years. Because looking away was comfortable, and because being the provider felt like enough all by itself. A man who earns the money but never once looks at where it goes is not protecting his family. He is just trusting and hoping, and trusting and hoping is not a plan. I left the door to everything we had standing wide open and never checked the lock. For 19 years. And I have had to own that, because the open door does not excuse the person who walked through it. But it was me who left it open. Let me tell you how the leak had been running. The signs I read as nothing. Sherry getting twitchy about the mail, getting to it first, always, which I thought was just her being on top of the bills. The way she started saying money was tight when my business was doing better than it ever had. And I figured costs were up, the way everything is, and worked more hours to cover it. New girlfriends she went out with that I never met. Nights at the casino down the highway that she called harmless fun, a girls' night. And I was glad she had something of her own. A name that came up once or twice, Dane, somebody from her casino crowd, a fellow who knew how to play the tables, and I thought nothing of it because why would I? And the thing I should have seen and could not let myself see. The way she stopped letting me anywhere near the computer when the banking was up, would close the laptop when I came in, said she had it handled. And I let her have it handled, because handling it was her job and questioning it felt like an insult. The leak was hissing the whole time. I just could not hear it over the sound of my own trust. There were sharper hisses too. The ones I told myself were nothing. The credit card offer that came addressed to me for a card I had never applied for, that Sherry snatched off the counter and said was junk mail, which I now know was not junk at all, but a paper trail I almost caught. The call from a number I did not know that she took in the other room with the door shut and came back from Pale. The way our tax refund, which used to be a small happy event, just stopped. And she said we owed a little this year, and then a little more the next. And I never asked to see the return I was signing, because she pointed at the line, and I signed it. The way I had signed everything she put in front of me for 19 years. A man who signs what he is told to sign without reading it is handing someone a blank check on his whole life. I signed and never read, because reading felt like distrust, and my not reading was the very crack the whole flood came through. And then a bank turned me down for a loan on my own good name, and I finally heard it, all at once, the way you hear a compressor seize. That afternoon, I did not drive home and confront her. I want to tell you what that restraint cost, because everything in me wanted to walk in the door and hold up that printout and watch her face. Instead, I sat in my van in that parking lot until my hands were steady, and I did the thing my trade taught me. When a system fails, you do not start ripping it apart in a panic. You put your gauges on it first. You find out what the pressures actually are, where the leak is, how far it has run, before you touch a single thing. Because a man who starts tearing into a system before he has read it just makes the damage worse and loses the evidence of what went wrong. So I did not tear in. I drove to a print shop, made copies of that credit report and started, very quietly, to put my gauges on my own life. I want to tell you what it is to sit across the supper table from someone the night you have learned what I learned. Because that was its own kind of attic in July. I came home that evening with $110,000 of her secret burning a hole in my chest, and she had made enchiladas, my favorite. And she asked about my day, and my daughter talked about school, and I passed the plates and I smiled and I answered, and inside me, the floor was gone and I was falling. I looked at my wife of 19 years across that table, this woman I had trusted with every dollar and every door, and I tried to see the person who had opened cards in my name and fed my son's college to a slot machine, and I could not make the two of them be the same woman, and yet they were. There is no harder acting in the world than being tender with someone across a dinner table when you have just read the proof of what they did. But I did it, every night, for weeks. Because my lawyer was right that the day Sherry knew I knew was the day the statements would start vanishing and the story would get straight. So I ate the enchiladas. I said they were good. And I went out to my shop after and put another night's work into the quiet map of the leak. A man can do hard things he never knew he could do when his kid's future is the thing on the line. The next morning, instead of going to a job, I went and saw a lawyer, and what that lawyer told me is the most useful thing I can hand you tonight. So write it down. Do not confront, do not panic, and do not, whatever you do, sign or move or pay anything until you understand the law of debt in your own state. Because in some states, her secret debt is also yours. The lawyer was a woman in Phoenix who had been doing this a long time and had a calm that put my own gauges back to level. I told her everything. The loan denial, the $110,000, the drained college account, the casino, Dane, all of it. And then she told me some things about Arizona that frightened me and then, slowly, did not. And I'm going to share the shape of them. Though I want to be clear, I am no lawyer, and your state runs its own way, and you need your own attorney for your own life. This is just my story. The first thing she told me dropped the floor out from under me all over again. She said Arizona is a community property state. She said that means that, as a rule, the assets a couple builds during a marriage belong to both of them equally. And, she said, and here her voice got careful, so do the debts. As a general rule, she said, debt taken on during the marriage is community debt, both spouses' responsibility. Even debt one spouse ran up without the other knowing. I sat there and felt the second wave of it, worse than the first, because the first wave was just betrayal. And this wave was the idea that I might be on the hook for half, or worse, of $110,000 of secret debt that my wife had run up to feed a life I knew nothing about. I asked her, plain, am I ruined? And she said, not so fast, because Arizona has a doctrine, and it is the thing that is going to save you. She called it a claim of waste. She said that in this state, when one spouse takes the community's money and squanders it, recklessly or intentionally, on things that have nothing to do with the marriage, gambling it away, or spending it on an affair, the court does not have to treat that as a shared loss. The court can call it waste, and assign that debt and that loss to the spouse who caused it, as their separate responsibility, and can award the innocent spouse a larger share of whatever is left to make up for it. She said the three things judges see most in these claims are the three A's: adultery, alcohol, and addiction, and that gambling and an affair were squarely in the heart of it. She told me that if I could document that the $110,000 had gone to the casino and to Dane and not to our family, then the law would not make me carry it. It would put it where it belonged, on her. Find the money, she said. Prove where it went. That is the whole ball game. Then she gave me the rules. The same ones I would give you no matter where you live. Do not move out of the house, because the day you leave, you have written the story of who walked away. Do not confront her, because the second she knows you know, the accounts get cleaned and the trail goes cold and the statements start disappearing. Do not pay down or move any of that debt yet. Do not try to fix it in a panic, because right now, that debt is your evidence, every dollar of it a fingerprint. Document everything, every statement, every charge, every withdrawal, the whole map of the leak. And get your business protected, because if I built it before the marriage or kept it separate, it might be mine alone and out of the pot. So I went home that night and I became an actor. I did not know a plain working man could be. I came in, tired from a day I had not actually worked, and I kissed my wife and asked what was for supper. For 19 years, she had handled the money in the dark. Now it was my turn to work in the dark for a while. And while she slept, and while she was out at her so-called girls' nights, I put my gauges on every line of our financial life. I pulled statements going back 2 years from every account I could get into, and where she had locked me out, I requested my own copies, the lawful way, because half those accounts had my name on them too, and a man is allowed to see his own debts. And the leak, once I could finally read the gauges, was catastrophic, and it had been running far longer than a year. It was all there, the casino, thousands at a time, again and again, a slow bleed and then a fast one. Cash advances off cards I never knew existed, opened in my name with my own information, which my lawyer told me was its own serious problem for Sherry. Because running up debt in your spouse's name without his knowledge is not just waste, it can cross into fraud. The drained college account, my son's future, gone to the tables and to a man named Dane, who it turned out was not just somebody from the casino crowd. The money told the story her mouth never would. There were the hotels, the dinners, a watch from a jeweler. Cash I could only assume went straight into his hand. My wife had not only gambled away our security, she had been funding a man with it, the family's money flowing out to the casino and to Dane in a current that had been running, quiet and cool, for years, while I crawled through attics in July and thought I was building us a future. The tracing was its own slow, sickening education. And I want to walk you through it because some of you are going to need it. You do not need to be an accountant. You need to be patient, and you need to read your own statements like a man reading a pressure chart. Line by line, no feeling, just numbers and dates. I laid 2 years of statements out on a workbench in my shop, and I went through them with a highlighter. And a pattern is a pattern. It cannot hide from a man who finally decides to look. The casino charges fell on the nights she had a girls' night. The cash advances clustered right before the big losses. The jeweler and the hotels lined up with the weekends she said she was visiting her sister. I did not need her to confess a thing. The money confessed for her. Every charge is a fingerprint, dated and stamped, and a year of fingerprints is a confession no one can take back. The hardest part was not finding it. The hardest part was sitting alone in that shop at 2 in the morning, watching 19 years of trust turn, line by highlighted line, into a crime scene. And the worst page of all was the college account. Because that one was not just money, that was my boy. I had a son 4 months from his high school graduation who still thought there was a fund with his name on it, who had been filling out applications, dreaming, and I knew now there was nothing behind it, that his mother had fed his future to a slot machine and a man named Dane. That was the page where I had to set the highlighter down and put my head in my hands. Because you can rebuild credit and you can rebuild a business, but how do you tell a 17-year-old that the future he was promised got gambled away? That was the night the betrayal stopped being about me at all. I gathered all of it, every page, and I built a map of the leak so complete that no one could argue with it, and I kept every bit of it in a box at my lawyer's office. off my property. Because the one night I had statements spread on the kitchen table, Sherry came home early, and I had about 3 seconds to slide them into a service manual and pick up a work order like I was doing paperwork for a job. She asked what I was doing. I said I was catching up on invoices, which an HVAC man can say at any hour and be believed. After that, every page lived with the lawyer. Keep your proof where the person in your own house cannot reach it. That is not paranoia. That is just keeping your gauges where they will not get smashed. Here is the part where it nearly broke me. And it was the law itself. Before the law saved me. For a stretch of weeks, that community property rule sat on my chest like a dead compressor. The way the general rule worked, until I proved the waste, that $110,000 was hanging over both of us, which meant over me. I lay awake doing the math of a man who might come out of his own betrayal not just heartbroken, but financially destroyed. My credit wrecked, my son's college gone, and half a fortune of someone else's secret debt chained to my ankle. I had done everything right for 19 years. Every bill paid, every wrench turned, and I was staring down ruin for the crime of having trusted my wife with the checkbook. That fear is a special kind. The fear of a careful man watching reckless choices that were not his become his problem. If you are in it tonight, I am not going to tell you it is small, but I am going to tell you what carried me through, which was a calm lawyer, a box full of documented proof, and a doctrine in the law built for exactly this. The fear was loud, the evidence was quiet, the evidence won. I want to say one more thing to anybody lying awake with that exact fear right now, because I know how it eats you. The cruelest part of community property debt is how unfair it feels at first. The idea that you, the careful one, could be made to pay for the recklessness you never chose and never even knew about. It feels like the law is on the side of the one who did wrong. But hear me, because this is what my lawyer made me understand. The law has a back door built for exactly the honest spouse in exactly your spot. And it is the waste doctrine. And the key to that door is documentation. The reckless spouse is counting on you being too overwhelmed, too ashamed, or too disorganized to ever trace it all and prove it. The single most powerful thing you can do is the boring thing, the highlighter and the statements and the patient map of where every dollar went. You do not beat this with rage. You beat it with a paper trail so complete the court cannot look away from it. The proof is the door. Build the proof, and the door opens. Because I had documented the waste so completely, the claim of waste held. The court looked at where that $110,000 actually went. To the casino and to Dane, and did not make me carry it. It was assigned to Sherry as her own separate debt, the consequence of her own reckless choices, and because she had squandered so much of the community, I was awarded a larger share of what little was left, to make up for it. The debt she ran up in my name without my knowing became its own serious matter, the kind that does not go well for the person who did it. My business, which I had started before I married her and kept in its own name, stayed mine, the one piece of solid ground in the whole flood. It was not a windfall. There was not much left to divide. But I walked out not carrying the weight of her secret life. And for a man who had walked into that bank thinking he might lose everything, not carrying it was the whole victory. The debt in my name took its own road to get cleaned up. And I will tell you about it, because it matters. Running up cards in your spouse's name without their knowledge is not a gray area. It is the kind of thing the credit companies and the courts take seriously, and once the truth was documented, the burden of those accounts went where it belonged, and my own name began the slow work of clearing. It was not instant. There were letters and disputes and patient phone calls, and a fair amount of proving I was the victim and not the spender. But the same paper trail that won the claim of waste was the thing that let me lift the fraud off my own good name. one account at a time. Document once, and the same proof works in 3 different rooms. And Dane, here is the part that tells you exactly what he was. The money was the whole thing. As long as Sherry had the family's money to spend on him, the casino comps and the dinners and the watch, Dane was around. The minute it was all gone, the accounts drained, the cards maxed, the divorce filed and the money cut off, Dane evaporated like refrigerant out of a cut line. A man who is with a woman for the money she is hemorrhaging is not with her at all. And the second the hemorrhage stops, so does he. Sherry blew up a 19-year marriage and her own children's security for a man who was gone the instant she could no longer pay for him. I take no joy in that. She is my kid's mother, and I once loved her, and addiction is a real and sad thing. But there is a hard justice in it that I did not have to lift a finger to build. The money was the only thing holding Dane there, and she set fire to her whole life to keep paying for a man who was only ever standing in the warmth of her burning house. I think about that sometimes, the pure arithmetic of it, because it is the truest thing in the whole story. Dane did not love her. Dane loved the comps and the cash and the watch, and the woman who would keep the table going as long as the chips lasted. The day the chips ran out, the man ran out, because that was the only thing he had ever actually been there for. There is no revenge a wronged man could invent that lands harder than that plain fact landing on the person who paid for it. Sherry did not just lose me and lose the family. She got to find out, in the cold after, exactly how much the man she destroyed it all for had really wanted her, which was precisely as much as she could pay, and not $1 more. I would not wish that lesson on anyone, but I did not author it. She bought it herself, at full price. I am not going to give you a scene where she came crawling back, because that is not how this one went. What I will tell you is how it actually ended, which was quieter and harder and better. I did not get rich. I got free. I kept my business and my good name, which the credit world and I are slowly rebuilding, one on-time payment at a time. The way you recharge a system, slow and right instead of all at once. My kids live with me, in our house, and they see their mother, and I have never said one cruel word about her in their hearing, because she is their mom, and her struggle is not theirs to inherit, and the wound is mine to carry. My son still got to start college, a little smaller and slower than we planned, community college first and a part-time job, and he is not ashamed of it, and neither am I. Because a young man who learns to build something back from nothing has learned a thing no drained account can teach him. We are not where I thought we would be, but the leak is found and stopped, and what is left holds pressure, and a system that holds pressure can be charged back up. I had to tell my son the truth, in the end, because he was old enough, and it was his future that got taken, and he deserved honesty from at least one of his parents. I did not do it to turn him against his mother. I sat him down and I told him, plain and without venom, that the money for school was gone, that it was not his fault and not mine, that grown people sometimes get sick in ways that hurt the people they love, and that we were going to build his future back a different way, together, starting now. I watched a 17-year-old take a blow that would have flattened a lot of grown men, and then I watched him square his shoulders and ask me what the plan was. That was the proudest and saddest moment of my life in the same breath. He got a job. He started at the community college, and the kid who could have coasted on a fund is instead building his own way up. And I would not trade the man that is making him for all the college funds in Arizona. Here is what I have left for you, and then I will let you rest. The failure that ruins you is rarely the one that quits all at once. It is the slow leak, the loss so gradual that everything still feels cool enough that nobody looks. Right up until the hottest day, when it finally runs dry with no slack left and quits when you need it most. So do not wait for the hottest day to check your system. Put your gauges on your own life, the marriage, the money, the accounts you told yourself you did not need to look at, because somebody else was handling it. Trust is a beautiful thing, and trust without ever once checking the gauges is not trust. It is just hoping in the dark. And hoping in the dark is how a careful man wakes up $100,000 in a hole he never dug. Look at your own books, not because you suspect the person you love, but because a thing you never check is a thing that can leak for a year before you feel it. And if you find, like I did, that the ground was rotting under you the whole time, hear me. You can come back from broke. Broke is a number, and numbers can be rebuilt, slow and steady. One honest payment at a time. What you cannot come back from is losing your own head, or your own hands, or your own name in the panic of the discovery. So keep those. Read the gauges before you tear in. Find out exactly how the leak ran. Let the law put the weight where the weight belongs, on the one who caused it, not on the one who only trusted. And then start charging the system back up, slow and right. Because a man who keeps his head and his hands can rebuild anything but the years. And even the years get better than you think, on the far side of the leak. And one last thing. For the man or woman who is sitting tonight in the rubble of a number that feels too big to ever climb out of. I have been in that exact parking lot, holding that exact printout, certain my life was over at 44. It was not over. It was just rerouted. Money is the most rebuildable thing there is, more rebuildable than trust, more rebuildable than years. I have watched my own credit crawl back up from the basement, one paid bill at a time. And I have watched my son build a future with his own two hands that is sturdier than any handed-down fund would ever have made him. And I have watched myself become a man who actually reads what he signs and looks at his own books and is, for all the cost of the lesson, harder to fool than the trusting fool I used to be. The leak took my savings. It did not take my trade, my name, my kids, or my ability to start again. Because I refused, in the worst hour, to let it take those. Guard those four things through anything, and there is no financial hole so deep that a steady hand cannot climb out of it. I am most of the way out already, and the air up here is fine. Take care of yourselves out there, check your gauges, and tell me where you are watching from tonight. I read every single one.